6 Essential Woodworking Tips for Beginners. In today's episode, we will be discussing 6 essential tips to know before you start woodworking. Each tip will better prepare you for your next woodworking project, so you don't make the same frustrating mistakes I did when I was getting started. Tip number 1. Create a simple, dedicated woodworking space. You don't need a fancy and expensive workshop or garage to start woodworking, but if you can find an area to keep all of your tools out, it can save you a lot of time and energy. If you don't have a dedicated space though, it's okay. You can always create a temporary workbench with a pair of sawhorses and a piece of plywood from the local home improvement store. While having a dedicated space can make life a lot easier, don't let not having one keep you from getting to all of those woodworking projects you have been dying to start. In another video, we will go through the essential tools all amateurs need to get started. Tip number 2. Understand the different types of wood and their real dimensions. There are many different types of wood, which are categorized as softwoods and hardwoods. Some softwood examples include pine, cedar, spruce, and fir, and some hardwood examples include oak, walnut, maple, birch, cherry, and mahogany. Availability and prices will vary depending on where you live, but in general, hardwoods are more expensive than softwoods. One of the most common types of wood used in DIY projects and furniture building is pine wood. Pine is an affordable and readily available option at most local home improvement stores, and it comes in many sizes. I recommend using pine for beginner woodworking projects. Then as your skills improve, try working with some different types of wood. All project plans list the wood sizes that are needed for the project. But what do those sizes actually mean? What does 1x8 mean? How wide is 1x2 lumber? Logically, it seems like 1x2 would mean the wood is 1 inch by 2 inches, right? However, the actual dimensions of the wood are 3/4 inch by 1.5 inches. The difference has to do with the sawmill process and shrinkage of the wood. Below is a handy chart of actual lumber sizes for any new do-it-yourselfers who are just getting started. Keep in mind that this chart is for softwood dimension lumber only, not hardwoods. Hardwood dimensions are slightly different, and I can cover those in another video. Tip number 3. Select the right lumber. When it is time to pick out the wood for your project, try to use the straightest boards you can find and avoid warped or bowed boards. This may require a bit of picking and digging through the wood pile at the store, but it will make a huge difference and save you a lot of headaches. Often, at first glance, a board looks straight when in fact it is warped or bowed. The trick is to lay the board down on the ground. This will help you identify any areas that are warped, bowed, or twisted. Make sure to turn it on multiple sides to ensure it is straight on all sides. Tip number 4. Don't make all the cuts at once. Measure and cut as you go. When you get a woodworking plan, all the cuts are usually listed at the top all together. No matter how tempting and efficient it might be, don't make all the cuts right away. You might make small errors in measurements. If you make a small error, it can have major consequences later on. The best approach is to measure the spacing and sizes and make the cuts as you go so you can account for any variations. If I am building a table, I will cut all the legs and aprons, build the frame, and then make the cuts for the tabletop. Tip number 5. Cut off factory edges before using the boards. If you don't start with a straight edge, you will likely never get a straight cut. When you get a board from the lumber store, check the edge using a speed square. More often than not, it will not be square. It is important to cut off the ends to create a perfectly square edge to start with. Tip number 6. Sand before assembly. Sanding is the most important step in the finish of your project. No matter how great your project, if the finish isn't done well, it loses its impact. When I first started, I only sanded the visible parts after assembly. I was so wrong. Sand the boards before you assemble them. It is so much easier to get into corners, and it makes for a more professional finish. These are my 6 essential woodworking tips for beginners. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to help us keep bringing more of this type of content. Once you understand these tips, it's really just a matter of practice. Be sure to check out some of my other videos to see the best tools for beginners and some of my favorite projects to build. You can even pick out your first woodworking plans in the links below. Ted has thousands of ideas and plans for every skill level. Just pick the one you want and start building.